Hey, so I wanted to do a VR response for Brent Richards. Brent Richards is he's celebrating his 700 subscribers, which is just fantastic. 700 subscribers. He deserves a whole lot more. If you've seen my channel, you've seen his. I love his positivity that he brings into the community, into the hobby. I love the stuff that he shows. He shows stuff you just don't see on a lot of other channels, and it gets me excited, makes me want to go pick up random cards that I didn't know existed. So, uh, oftentimes after watching one of his videos, I'm searching eBay just to see if there are cards that look the the cards that he showed that they have players that I collect. But anyway, um, so he's celebrating 700 subscribers and doing that with a VR and asking for video responses, and then has this giveaway, which is just incredible. He always gives away so much for these, and I'm assuming that by the time he gets to 1,000 subscribers, he's going to be giving away like a 52 mantle or some crazy one of one. I don't know, refractor or something. Like, it's going to have to be just off the charts if he's going to keep getting better as he goes. So just incredible. So Brian, congratulations. It's super exciting to see your channel grow, and I hope and believe it should continue. So the VR he's asking for is for us to talk about our favorite hobby moment. And the minute I saw that this was what he wanted, I began thinking about it. I nailed down pretty quickly what I wanted to talk about, and then other people's videos started popping up, and there were a couple of them that I felt like, my goodness, that person should just win. It was just such a cool moment. Rob Cash Cards did one that was just, it was amazing. And so anyway, but I was like, well, I'm going to do mine anyway and throw my hat into the ring. Tell about my favorite hobby moment. And really, when I started to think about this, while there are lots of great moments, lots of great things that have happened, the answer to the question was fairly obvious right away. When I got back into collecting, I was trying to. I knew I wanted to get back into collecting cards, but didn't really know which direction to go. As a kid, I had collected baseball and basketball. Never really gotten into football. Lots of reasons for that, which I won't get into. But collected baseball and basketball, and so when I was getting back in, I was like, well, so what am I going to collect? I probably paid attention to football as much as anything else. I do. I participate in a few fantasy football leagues, so that was something. So maybe I want to do football cards, and I would buy a few packs and just nothing. It was just nothing. I wasn't excited about those, and well, maybe some basketball cards, and just nothing exciting about that. Even if I would buy older basketball cards, like buy stuff from the '90s, from when I collected, it just didn't do anything for me. And so the same thing with modern baseball. Although if you've watched my channel much, you know that I found some stuff within modern baseball that I actually really enjoy. Um, and so I began to think about vintage baseball. And my introduction to vintage baseball happened when I was a kid. Like a lot of kids who grew up in the '80s collecting baseball cards, their introduction to vintage was the turn back the clock cards. And so that was my introduction. I didn't go to shops, I didn't go to shows, I never saw vintage cards in real life. I just saw the cards on the cards that I collected when I was a kid. And so when I got back into the hobby and I began to think about vintage cards, I just remember thinking about all of these different cards that I'd seen from when I was a kid, and man, I'd love to pick up some of those. That'd be really awesome. I could see some of them in my head. And then I began to explore some other vintage cards and players, and just kind of getting excited about and you kind of start where I think most people start. So who are some Hall of Famers, and what do their cards look like? And I remember seeing cards in that I like, man, I'd love to get that card, and I'd love to pick up that card. And so the day of my favorite hobby moment, my two sons and I were going to a card show down just south of Pittsburgh. It's quite a large card show. We'd been to some other card shows, some smaller ones, but nothing like this one. It was, I think, 500 tables at the time, and so pretty big. And I was just like, man, maybe we can find something. So my boys, who mostly collect cards in the well, the hobby which shall not be named. uh, they do a lot of that. They do a little bit of basketball, and a little bit of football, a little bit of baseball, but mostly it's the dreaded Pokemon. And so we were going to go together, and they were going to look for their Pokemon, and I was going to look for my baseball cards. I was really going to see what I could do in the vintage card world. And so one table that I went to, I it was one of the early tables. I came across two cards at the same table that took me back to my childhood. I'll show them to you because I picked them both up that day. One was the see if I can get it out of that light. There we go. The '68 Bob Gibson. I remembered this being on one of the Turn Back the Clock cards, probably one of my favorite Turn Back the Clock cards, other than the Ricky Henderson, which is ironic. People kind of laugh because it's an 87 card with an 82 Turn Back the Clock 5 whole years. This one was, I don't remember what year off the top of my head, 88 or 89. And so this was a 68 card. So that's, obviously going back a long way. At the same table, he had the 72 Roberto Clemente. And the 72 Roberto Clemente is such a fantastic card anyway. And so I'm standing there, and I asked him prices and just assumed maybe I can get one with kind of, cause I didn't go with a lot of cash. I didn't really know what to expect. And and sure enough, both cards came in at a good price. I offered him a little bit less, and for the two combined, and we made a deal, and I walked away with both cards. I still had some cash left, and so I had remembered seeing when I was starting to look at all these cards. I'd remembered some of these cards. You know how cards just stick into your brain sometimes, not for any particular reason. And so one of those cards was a Phil Rizzuto, and I didn't really know a whole lot about Phil Rizzuto. I suppose I still don't know a whole lot about Phil Rizzuto, but I remember seeing a picture of his 54 tops. And and so I'm walking by another table. I don't have a lot of cash left, and at that point I was just planning on digging through some boxes and having some fun. But I see the 54 Phil Rizzuto, and it is an incredible card. And I looked at the price tag, and I think he had $20 for it. And there was part of me that kind of flashed back to my early childhood, and part of the problem with ever kind of envisioning picking up these these old vintage cards that they just cost an arm and a leg. Well, I picked up a 54 Phil Rizzuto that day, and I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite cards. It's still in my Hall of Fame binder. I've never picked up another Rizzuto. I mean, I probably will. I'd like to get some more of his cards, but I love the 54 Phil Rizzuto. It's a fantastic card. I think it will always. You see, even yet now I need to stop looking at it because I love the card. I think it's a fantastic card. I love the bold red background, and I love the two images of him on there. The 54 set is one of my favorite vintage sets anyway. But um, so those three cards all came at the same show. But that isn't what, I mean, that was an exciting thing for me. But during this time, my boys and I had kind of, we're shopping at different tables, we're doing different things, and we'd come across each other and interact once in a while and do all of that. But on the way home, so I live about an hour from there. And so my boys at the time would have been 10 and 12. 10 and 12, maybe 9 and 11, something like that. But I think 10 and 12. And so we're driving home, and the level of excitement that was in the van as we're driving was just super high. And I just remember how much I enjoyed sharing that experience with my boys. Like, and to be honest with you, they picked up a bunch of Pokemon cards that I I don't I don't care about, and I picked up a bunch of cards that they don't really care about. The thing was that we had gone to this card show and experienced this excitement. They'd never experienced anything like this before, seeing all of these tables with all of these cards, and I had never experienced anything like that. And just was so excited about being able to get some of these cards that I remembered from when I was a kid, a couple of them, getting some cards that I had only just discovered and realized, man, there's a card that's at 54. That was last year. That's 70 years old, right? Like that's an old card that I could get for almost nothing, and just how exciting that was. And so as we talked about it and talked on the way home, and just that level of excitement, we get home and my wife asked how the day was, kind of worried that I had set myself up for disappointment. And I said, no, it was fantastic. It was better than I imagined. It was more fun. Had more fun with my boys, more fun picking up some cards. And so we've done shows since then. We continue to do shows. We'll do more shows in the future. We've got another one coming up in a few weeks, um, and those will all be exciting. But if you ask me my favorite hobby moment, it was going to that show on that day, picking up a few cards, getting into vintage baseball really for the first time, and being able to share the hobby with my boys. And even though we're different segments of the hobby, um, we're still all enjoying this experience together. So anyway, that's it for today. I'll quit dragging it on. Thanks a lot, Brent, for doing this. I really enjoy being able to share some of these stories and being able to hear some of these stories. There have been some great ones. So thank you all for watching. If you've made it this far, I appreciate that, and we'll see you on the next one.